Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the CHSG History Podcast. We're your hosts, I'm Sienna.
And I'm Annabelle. Thanks for tuning in to our brand new podcast, where we bring you some of the most interesting, unusual and surprising stories from history.
And I'm Kalechi. Yeah, we're here to dig into both the big moments you might already know about and some of the hidden gems of the past that will totally blow your mind. From epic disasters to remarkable women, huge mistakes that changed the world, and even some bizarre facts about famous people you thought you knew.
This show is entirely researched, written and hosted by us, real students. So if you're curious about history and want to know more, you're in the right place. We've got some awesome stories lined up and we can't wait to share them with you.
In today's episode, we're diving into one of the biggest global disasters which you never heard of, the eruption of Mount Tambora. What happened and how did it affect our people and planet? We'll break it all down.
Plus, we'll take a look at some of the remarkable women from history, some of them British and some of them further afield. Wait till you hear about what we've got to say about Catherine the Great.
You won't want to miss that, so stick around, subscribe, and join us as we explore the crazy, amazing, and sometimes unbelievable stories that shaped our world.
We'll promise you'll learn something new and maybe even get inspired along the way. Let's get started.
Okay, first up, it's time for us to find out about a magnificent monarch.
That's right, folks. Today we are taking another deep dive into the mystery of history.
Diving into the tale of two brothers.
One is a Lionheart.
And one is a soft sword.
The tale of Richard the Lionheart and King John the Soft Sword. I'm Mel.
I'm Annabelle.
I'm Ellie.
And I'm Amelia. And welcome to this slot of the podcast.
Ellie, I believe you are particularly interested in the topic we are going to discuss today.
That's right, Annabelle. I believe these brothers' story is particularly interesting because of the huge contrast between these two.
So what were the highlights of King John's reign? Not like they were colourful or anything.
Well, he was on the throne for 17 years and was seen as an ineffective monarch.
Ineffective?
What about King Richard?
Unlike his brother, Richard the Lionheart, who spent 10 years on the throne, was yet way more successful.
Did they make any mistakes, if you can pick one?
Well, Richard has made tons. From going on pointless adventures to going to battle too much, that he started losing control over his own kingdom. Imagine that.
Imagine losing control of your own kingdom. They call John the Failure.
Don't get too reliant on John, though. He got himself the nickname Soft Sword because of how bad he was on the battlefield.
Did these kings do any horrible deeds? Ones that made them lose popularity, for example?
Well, I don't know. Did they?
Amelia, we discussed this. Yes, they did. John failed to reclaim his land in France and raised taxes because of this. He also lost many of the royal jewels in a marshy lake.
In a marsh? How did he manage to do that?
Allegedly, a whirlpool appeared, dragging the king's treasures underwater.
Oh.
So, just to get that out of my head, I heard there's been a debate on Richard's sexuality. Care to explain?
Yes, it's a remarkably interesting topic. We were super surprised when we found that out.
The reason the discussion came up is because he had a close friendship with another man.
There's been a theory going around that Richard was in a relationship with someone named Philip Augustus, who was from France.
So, was he in a relationship with Augustus?
It's a huge debate. Well, some historians think, even though he was married to a Spanish princess, that he was in fact in a relationship with Augustus.
Meanwhile, others argue that it was a religious sin to love someone of the same gender back in the medieval times. This is an amazing thing, even though there could be a chance it's not true.
Wait, this is the same period where they didn't want leaving the kitchen, right? So, who was in the kitchen?
That is a stereotype, Amelia. Many women did in fact achieve great things in the medieval period. Take John and Richard's mother herself, Eleanor of Aquitaine, for example. She was a powerful woman in the medieval period. She led a crusade to the Holy Land and was Queen of England and France.
That's cool. Do you guys think personally that John and Richard deserve their titles?
Well, technically, yeah. John was a horrible fighter on the battlefield, so soft sword makes sense. Richard was too. Very brave, like a lion.
I think it's very unfair to call a king who only spent 10 months in his own country throughout 10 years of ruling and losing control of his country because of how long he was gone, to be called a Lionheart.
I think it's unfair as well. But to be fair, King John was a soft sword on the battlefield. My conclusion would be neither is good, and that they're both just as bad as each other.
That is fair, Mel. Anything else?
Well, here's a few fun facts about them and their lives.
The two kings are from France.
Their parents being Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine.
Their mother died on the 1st of April, 1204.
Or was it just a prank?
She died due to illness, as most people did.
In the autumn of 1216, King John contracted dysentery. He was brought to Newark Castle to recover. However, he died on the 19th of October 1216.
That night, a thunderstorm raged above the town. Many at the time believed that the storm was the sound of the gates of hell opening to receive the dead king, which probably meant he went to hell.
Oh well, sucks to suck, I guess.
Anyways, I hope you liked this lot.
If you did, be sure to tune in next time.
Where we'll discuss
Another interesting subject in history.
Fascinating work from our magnificent monarchs team. I had no idea King John was seen as such a failure.
Next up, it's time to find out about Mount Tambora. Let's head over to our Great Disasters team.
Hello, and welcome to Disasters from the Past. I'm your host, Annabelle, and here with my two fellow historians, Sienna and Kelechi.
Hi.
I'm so excited to talk about a topic. I wonder what it is, Kelechi.
Yeah, same. Is it more important than Pompeii?
Yes,
What is it?
it's Mount Tambora.
One of the biggest disasters in history.
My first question is, what is Mount Tambora?
Mount Tambora is an active stratovolcano. It's in Indonesia and last erupted in 1815. The eruption was 10 times more powerful than the more famous Krakatoa, which erupted years later but was only more popular due to the invention of the telegraph.
That sounds really unfair. So what happened when it erupted?
The countries around the world lost a year of light and...
Wait, let me check. They lost a year of light?
Yep, the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in 1815 triggered a change in the global climate. The heavy material fell to the ground and the ocean surface. However, when lighter material reached the stratosphere, they spread out and created an aerosol cloud the size of Australia. Kelechi, take it from here.
The cloud blocked loads of sunlight from reaching the Earth and changed the global climate by 2 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit, the effects of which devastated much of the world in what should have been the summer of 1816.
Did it break any records then if it was so powerful?
Many volcanologists regarded the Mount Tambora eruption as the largest and most destructive volcanic event in recorded history.
Were there any other consequences or even positive effects?
Well, there was actually one positive. It did influence a man to invent the bike because many of the horses died from crop failure. However, they lost a year of summer. 111,000 people died, which is about the seating capacity of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, and many horses died as well.
So basically mainly negatives.
And is this true? I heard that William Turner painted a painting showing the year without summer.
Yes, this is very true. He unwittingly captured the volcanic sunset as his palette was influenced to include all of the dust and gas in the air.
How did it affect the climate?
Well, if you had lived in Ireland 200 years ago, you would have experienced non-stop rain for 2 months. You would have also experienced extreme crop failure and famine. The famine caused a disease called typhus.
Well, what is typhus?
Typhus is a disease spread by lice, fleas, and chiggers. The symptoms are usually a high fever, chills, and a vicious rash, which can spread all over your whole body. You could also experience a bad cough and maybe some body aches.
Oh my god, that's horrible. But isn't a chigger also called a berry bug? You know, the ones that live in warm, grassy areas?
Yes!
Who did the eruption affect then? Because it reached Ireland, it must reach other places as well.
The year without a summer was an agricultural disaster. Historian D Post called it the last great substance crisis in the Western world. The weird weather of 1816 had its greatest effects on Indonesia as well as New England, Atlantic Canada and Western Europe because of later famine.
Well, that is all from us today. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time for more great disasters.
Bye.
Well, I had no idea that Mount Tambora had such a terrible effect across the planet.
Exactly, such a disaster, yet not many people know about it. What's up next?
Now it's time for us to find out more about a remarkable woman. Let's head over to the team to find out more.
Hello everybody. I'd like to introduce today's topic, which focuses on Catherine the Great of Russia.
That's right, we're going to be discussing one of the greatest Russian leaders and most influential women of her period. But who was she?
Catherine the Great was Empress of Russia for more than 30 years, which you might find surprising as she was born into minor German nobility. How did she become the leader of such an empire, though?
Well, she was chosen to be the wife of future Tsar Peter III when his aunt, Empress Elizabeth of Russia, declared she would not marry. This meant that she would become Empress alongside her husband when he took the throne.
Sounds great, right? But not for long. Her marriage was an unhappy one. Eventually, Catherine led a coup to depose her husband and took his place as ruler of the Russian Empire.
But what happened to Peter?
He was forced to abdicate and was pronounced dead 8 days later. Whether or not his wife had any involvement is still up to historical debate.
Interesting. I guess we'll never know.
Yes, but let's focus on what we do know about her reign. Can you tell us about her values as a ruler?
She was very progressive and attempted to imitate the great and Western powers of Europe through fashion and architecture. She also introduced political reforms like dividing Russia into individual provinces, making it easier to govern.
So is it fair to say she was incredibly forward-thinking?
Not entirely. She was still a firm autocrat and became more despotic in the later years of her reign, but I guess she had to be as a female ruler in the 18th century.
That's true. Her gender affected the way she ruled and the way she was perceived by foreign powers a great deal. She portrayed many male attributes such as her defeat of the Ottoman Empire. However, this sparked controversy abroad as Europe felt threatened by such a powerful woman and responded with misogynistic comments about her series of lovers and unhappy marriage.
So, despite her political and military success, she was still ridiculed for stereotypical feminine traits.
Precisely. But focusing on the good, to what extent would you label her a significant monarch?
Well, she introduced many social reforms such as dividing the country into provinces and districts, expanded its borders, and continued its westernization as a European superpower. She opened the first institution for women's education in St. Petersburg, contributing to her influentiality in the empire. However, she was still unsuccessful in actualizing the emancipation of the serfs, as she abandoned this due to extreme backlash from other Russian nobles, arguably limiting the extent of her reform. Additionally, she was still a firm autocrat, a principle that remained until the end of the Romanov dynasty. However, her forward-thinking values were ahead of her time, meaning that although her impact was not as significant as it could have been, her values shaped the future of Russia and her legacy was continued through her grandson Alexander I.
Thank you for that lovely overview. We hope you enjoyed this week, and if you did, come back next time for our episode about Alexander I and his conflict with Napoleon.
I really enjoyed that one.
Me too. I think we're nearly ready for the end of our programme now.
Not already? Come on, let's have one more.
Okay, you persuaded me. Let's dive into one of the great mistakes in history.
Yes, that's exactly the sort of thing I'm here for.
Welcome to the first instalment of the biggest mistakes in history, part of the CHSG History podcast. I'm Grace, joined today by Mariam, to discuss the tragedy of the burning of the Library of Alexandria. My first question to you, Mariam, is why should people be so interested in something they've never heard about, that doesn't even exist anymore?
Thanks for having me. That's a great question to start with. The library was far more than what we consider to be a library today.
What do you mean? A library's just a library?
This one was special. It housed the largest collection of knowledge in the world, and its destruction led to a 500-year dark age, the Sutton Library to the beginning of the Dark Ages.
Our listeners may not have seen Sutton, but if you want to see the modern Dark Ages, go.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. The Library of Alexandria was a little bit different from Sutton, as it was a centre of knowledge and academia in the ancient world of the Romans and Egyptians. It held texts by Homer, Aristotle, and even the first blueprints for a steam engine all the way back in 417 BCE.
So, if I can be so bold to ask, Mariam, what happened to destroy it if it was so powerful and influential?
The Romans and Egyptians who built it were actually the cause of its destruction. The leaders of the time had no regard to academia or technological advance, which you could say is why they didn't last very long after it was burnt down.
How did they burn it down? Through a neglect of learning?
It was actually a famous battle between Julius Caesar and Ptolemy XIII over Cleopatra's new alliance with Rome over her half-brother, who was also her husband and the pharaoh.
So she was related to her husband. Is that even legal?
Yep, you couldn't sugarcoat that.
Anyhow, who wages a war in a library?
Caesar. He actually decided that his best course of action was to set fire to a city to destroy Ptolemy's ships and hopefully catch them on fire too. He was successful in his military endeavour, however the Library of Alexandria burnt down in the process and only a small number of original texts were saved.
What was there to stop him from just rebuilding it and collecting more books again?
Well, Grace, most of the texts were one of a kind in the first place, and Caesar wasn't in power for very long after this event, meaning he didn't have time to dedicate to rebuilding. Neither did any of his successors, and soon after the Roman Empire became Christian, rejecting all forms of paganism.
Why does it matter if everyone is Christian at the time? Surely people still want to know things. Also, I'm pretty sure they used a lot of ancient Roman ideas during the medieval period, as Christianity held on to those for a long time, like Roman numerals we still use on clocks.
While a Christian influence was interested in new knowledge, they were more concerned with controlling ideas and religion amongst people, which did mean controlling and censoring information. We have a first-hand account from just before burning, distinguished by the author's mention of the old gods and the influence of academia, a concept completely abolished during Christian domination.
Okay, at this point we're at the end of the Roman Empire, but what actual effects did the fire have, especially in the long term?
Some listeners may in fact be familiar with this term, the Christian Dark Ages, which began in 391 CE. This was a time when there was no new developments in knowledge and understanding of the world around us, and humanity regressed into a much simpler way of life. This lasted in multiple centuries, and had such a big effect on us that we still feel it to this day.
And on that note, as the story ends here, so does our time. You've been a wonderful guest, Miriam, and I hope to have you again to expand on the terrible mistakes that humans have made, even at the expense of knowledge and sometimes lives.
And thank you for having me, Grace. I'll be glad to come again and tell you more about the tragedies in history.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed learning about these fantastic stories from the past with us today.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. Don't forget, we'll be back soon with more historical highlights for you.
If you like this episode, make sure to tell your friends.
So until next time, keep exploring the past and we'll see you in the next episode of the CHSG History Podcast.